Before dinosaurs roamed the land, before the first mammals appeared, life was wildly different on our planet. And yet evidence of these ancient times is surprisingly hard to come by. How do we piece together what Earth was like so long ago? But the reality of the pre-world was actually much more bizarre than anything that could have possibly evolved in the LME era. Take, for example, the first animals to truly conquer the land. These weren't cute little proto-wombats. Instead, it was a group of weird fish-like creatures known as After all, the first tetrapods were fish, and many of the creatures that succeeded them, like the ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs, were also fish. Surprisingly, however, we still know very little about the fish that lived before the dinosaurs. As you can imagine, fish don't preserve as well as larger animals. This doesn't mean that you're doomed to get smaller and smaller until you reach the size of an ant. And don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. Thanks for watching. Oxygen levels fluctuate all the time, and it's possible that they could increase again, allowing giant animals to repopulate the Earth. Who knows? Maybe one day there will be giant squirrels. And since most of the prehistoric fish were pretty small, we have almost nothing to show for their existence. This makes it really difficult to study their evolution and what they looked like. Luckily, scientists were able to discover a few fossils of prehistoric fish, including one called This fish resembled a giant eel and likely swam around during the Devonian period, which lasted from around 359 to 354 million years ago. While there aren't any dinosaurs from this time period, other strange creatures like armored fish and jawless fish called tetrapods were ugly, awkward, and definitely not what we would call cute. Well, it turns out that the dinosaurs didn't actually evolve from any of them. That's right. It seemed like the bigger, the better when it came to prehistoric animals. So what happened? Why aren't there any giant animals today? You might be surprised to learn that the reason why there are no giant animals alive today is pretty much the same as the reason why there are no dinosaurs. It all has to do with oxygen. Giant animals need lots of oxygen to survive. But Earth's oxygen levels have been dropping for millions of years. It seems that way back before the dinosaurs, the atmosphere was full of oxygen. This allowed giant bugs and amphibians to grow to enormous sizes. But as time went on, Earth's oxygen levels dropped, and so did the size of its animals. The group of animals that includes birds, mammals, and humans split off from other vertebrates long before any of the animals mentioned above ever existed. These early vertebrates were almost certainly fish, but like we said before, we know very little about them. It was not until the Cambrian Explosion of 500 million years ago that animals suddenly diversified and began to fill up the oceans. But the question remains, what happened to the animals that came before the Cambrian Explosion? There's a gap in the fossil record that stretches back hundreds of millions of years. All we know for sure is that the first animals probably evolved from single-celled organisms sometime around 600 million years ago. They also had a very bad reputation because their descendants would eventually go on to include dinosaurs, which caused mass extinctions and ended up going extinct themselves. So yeah, not exactly the poster children for cuteness. And how did life eventually transform from small invertebrates to the dinosaurs we all know and love today? Join us as we explore Earth before the dinosaurs. In fact, they lived so long before the dinosaurs that we don't even have any fossils of them. What we do have, however, are their tracks. The first tetrapod tracks were discovered back in 1934. And since then, we've been able to piece together much of their anatomy by studying their footprints. What we know so far suggests that tetrapods were bulky amphibious creatures with stumpy legs and no necks. Okay, so maybe they weren't that cute after all. Hey there, welcome to Paleologic. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends. Doing these three things will help us bring more awesome prehistoric videos to you. When most people think about prehistoric life on Earth, they tend to imagine giant monsters like Tyrannosaurus rex and Triceratops. The world's first tetrapods evolved around 365 million years ago, meaning they lived long before any dinosaurs. Lush fern-covered forests soon covered the land, and gigantic millipedes lumbered through them. Even the largest modern millipedes are nowhere near as big as their prehistoric counterparts. Some species grew to be over 3 feet long, which is the size of a small car. And if that's not terrifying enough, some of these giant millipedes also had huge pincers that they used to capture prey. But what about the oceans? So what does science have to say about how these creatures eventually gave rise to the dinosaurs? Giant amphibians dominated the land, giant insects buzzed around them, and giant ocean titans patrolled the seas. But don't worry, what's your favorite prehistoric animal? Let us know in the comments section down below.